Alright, everybody good? Advantage one is counterfeiting. The sign is supposed to different knowledge requirement for secondary liability results in reactive any counterfeiting imposed by brands. Camel 23, current law is a government requiring your government responsibility for protecting the state of liability was counterfeit knowledge. To search proactively the massive problem with counterfeits and a reactive response for Tiffany to actively when they have specific knowledge for releasing a petition to remove any lawyers when it gets placed into the wild problem. And online counterfeiting is skyrocketing. E-commerce is the key vector. Check up at 23. 7 to 10 worldwide counterfeits in the past year was following via e-commerce media. Following is conventional with all the powers we can hobby for counterfeits, especially third-party sales counterfeits. Repeatedly use all the platforms up to the fact that personal counterfeits as a proactive requirement for constructing knowledge about word and a specific knowledge requirement creates financial incentives to enable unchecked counterfeiting. Wonderful in 21 because platforms have no duty to prevent and encourage, but there's a strong incentive to access scroll paper and knowledge that consists of the burden of costs to provide knowledge to as to each and every instance across every platform so the resources would be impossible to monitor behaviorally for a large place over farming encourages platforms to apply to avoid liability. The sharing resources changes secondary liability redistribute providing counterfeiting so there's responsibility sharing and the contemporary knowledge standard funds are market with counterfeit microelectronics. Cable 23 requiring contemporary knowledge on platforms to insulate themselves from liability marketplace avoid knowledge burdens all so capable workable at the time losing the realize led to a money counter effects including microelectronics content independent liability for redistribute force powers or curtail activity and e-commerce creates cyber vulnerabilities in the cyber department of defense and the internet of things. Cable 23 e-commerce counterfeiting will go to console limits against some available provide legitimacy shortages go to the limit their bad actors contractors the DAD percent of the market obsolete the contractors may be forced to purchase outside the authorized chain 50% of all parts for electronics and counterfeits with emphasis on the lowest cost of factors and increasing number of devices connected to the IoT potential losses increased by order of magnitude and there was hardware shortages causing catastrophic failures across defense space and aviation. Cable 23 calls to neighbor parts have become counterfeiting the champions could be working to fill chamber parts of the census yes sponsored by home stage for attacks US patient catastrophic risk or counterfeit missile guidance may not function or show counterfeit the location counterfeit scare vectors to defense space and aviation fail facing what can be catastrophic and adversarial sponsor or exploit current vulnerabilities. Second 24 actors are getting infrastructure trying to specific reasons that tickets helping actors including vulnerabilities destroy components of the grid attacks originating from hardware world devastating by leaving military installations that capable of hostile nature utilized by its ultimate defensive capabilities nuclear facilities. This catastrophic destruction should interfere with radiological release for data attacks hardware outreaches and vulnerabilities to deterrence triggers nuclear war with Russia, China, or Iran. Motion 21. U.S. faces imitation for cyber attackers probably because our American military conventional nuclear weapons alone is threatening to happen between superpowers. Russian cyber attacks is likely to throw the U.S. China's likely to make a massive cyber attack against the United States. Iran and such as conflict institutional damage to massive cyber attacks against CI disrupt the balance dependent on nuclear deterrence and intrusions of all to attacks on weapons and civic extinction had in Ukraine 23. Unintentional in one country reverberating effects on the system attacks portent dangers to PC actions on multiple attacks on weapons attacks and shutdown power confrontation escalated nuclear attacks which the end of civilization confrontation has flow effects on other countries and independently the IoT is for an agricultural innovation but cyber vulnerabilities to derail the transition. Go Guardian 24. The baby goes for 70% of advances are responsible for IoT and robots who increase quantity equality about the new age is active for smart from utilizing multi-tech and corporate security problems taking the multiple processes to utilize automated systems which could cause outbreaks and attackers on lack of food security and instability and U.S. agricultural innovation stabilizes global yields from food stocks. Finding 23. Body and pockets are drugs across the West Ukraine. The global food system has been charged that the U.S. has more companies to food security innovation make them possible to citrus and tax majors helps effectively improve yield with the population projected to reach 10 billion Americans opportunity to lead and spread the benefit around the world and nuclear war. CHF in 21. Emerging body of evidence for crisis increased risk of conflict and minor strikes and consequences most dangerous in countries with WMD rackets and bombs and around body weapons food insecurity have severe consequences. Global risk factor increase the likelihood of other catastrophes each nuclear war decrease resilience and the plan of plasma constructed knowledge e-commerce platforms and authority exists for brick and mortar retailers who creates clarity that lessens cost. Document 22. The core economic clear interpretation of the reason that I stand only liable they failed to do investigations similar to lexicology unless e-commerce or e-commerce clear guidance and Gorgon explain that constructed knowledge can derive for many would trademark and platforms on its popular had a duty to conduct transaction will not be ordered similar to it's less burdensome than Tiffany does not require research. Everyone the platform where every user will be monitored duty for owners compared to Tiffany always going to be better suited to solve the balancing conundrum and constructed knowledge is a flexible standard not a virtue violent that creates keyword enforcement proportion to the scope of infringement. Posting 11. The proper standard should never high liability for constructed knowledge of the marketplace fails to take reasonable precautions as the market has been in the EU even the marketplace has no knowledge may be liable should have if it should have identified illegality circumstances very bits of practical consideration not a problem rule that always places the burden on the laws precautions customer with the scope of infringement the points not version tackle is may discharge you by taking any kind of emergency the thing that is for the freaking mortar products is no different if any by posing a specific knowledge and test while flexibility places the burden on earnings of maximal under your generalized knowledge which restore uniformity and provide clear guidance. That's the plan the United States federal government should determine that constructed knowledge and favor contributory liability in the absence of reasonable precautions. Advantage to is money laundering. Online counterfeiting has the largest criminal enterprise in the world and the U.S. is the largest market. Camel 23. Trademark counterfeiting continues dramatically with online shopping has grown exponentially. The U.S. is the world of the commerce and benefits making lower risk and selling a brick and mortar financial deal. The largest enterprise in the world across nearly $1 trillion a year where the drugs are trafficking counterfeits impact economies has 2.5% of trade and narrow trademark liability creates loopholes for transaction laundering enforcement that opens the global banking system. Touch 21. Liability for infringement encourages best practices such as vetting, removing counterfeits and sellers, lack of integrity in the banking system. Laundering is one of the biggest challenges facing the AML. Brick and mortar storefronts is already proven to be a laundering mechanism infringement. IBB becoming the favorite financing for terrorist laundering because cyber enabled actors with loopholes into stronger walls are enforced and Transaction laundering is the least enforced part of the anti-money laundering regime after June 23. TI involves reverting illicit transactions through a company for legitimate conspiracies that are in high demand by criminals to drive capabilities and sell TL on this and entity of crucial money detection. I found awareness is lost at any stop with e-commerce is over recently has been the least enforced web form of ML and illicit financing is the threat multiplied that fuse terrorism, global kleptocracy. Window 21. Illicit economic stuff with vulnerabilities, including alcohol financing, the life of the dictators, enabling not to control countries and terrorist finances and illicit economies over recent threats to undermine democracy, political conflicts, that multiply several across borders, illicit economic selling, especially across the digital world, also generated tremendous capacity for counterfeiters, illicit trade reached $2 trillion, and kleptocracy itself is an existential risk and amplifies all others. Detected in 2018. Contractor regimes are cross-cutting through the United States and do not exist threat economic power, contracts and government life conspiracy with a lot of crimes to correct and launder, revenue consequences, fuel radicalization, conflict, extremism, with the Houthi, Taliban, the Islamic State, and Boko Haram, and the Kurds, counter-terrorism, terrorist, and hold institutions, field recruitment against convergence, constitutes an alternative existential threat, thwarting peace, and 70% of conflicts, and nuclear terrorists likely sparse retaliation. Both means and motives are latent. NAS of 24. The number of types of groups is organizing the U.S. groups for retaliation, smart war, realize apocalyptic beliefs, or realize capability, the Taisha groups, and recruiting military personnel, their protection power, bonds, demonstrated willingness to define and refine point proxy, managing nuclear terrorism, may be managed by the prevalence of groups motivated to attack states, collaborate with terrorists, and even the credible threat of terrorism, spirals, and accidental nuclear war. Johnson in 21. Seeking status of nuclear detonation by terrorists during the high school, we implement nuclear to occur pure and non-state active bodies, point situation where making claims that have been sanctioned by the standing of crisis or repeated the character of crisis, non-state detonation of the credible threat gets smarter, accidental nuclear exchange, and contributory to trademark liability creates a global model and harmonizes the anti-counterfeiting law. Bursting in 10. 7% of world trade counterfeits and they and global security good importance internationally for jurisdictions reaching inconsistent results of lack of liquidity statement for all. Currency also leading debate worldwide. They usually look to the U.S. position on global commerce on up to the statement for trademark liability can influence other courts helping to harmonize law on a global basis. That clear hides as to who bears the burden, allocating flexibility is impossible, and a flexible rule is best. Vindicates the cheapest flexibility principle by distributing the burden between brands and platforms. Approaching 11. Benefits of minimum legal protection costs of avoiding harsh to be worn by the cheapest cost of avoiding marketplace to cost of measure that the burden is on all marketplaces that would be without reason to prevent counterfeiting understand expertise of the state of force action costs and result in undue chilling enforcement trademarks is a complex effort involved that involved different measures. The cheapest avoided may differ right when the originally placed burden on either would be a number where the focus should be on burden shifting rather than burden sharing rather than burden shifting. The cheapest cost is further by a flexible rule and proactive enforcement incentivizes self-regulation that reduces overall costs, including 22. Platforms might not monitor because of coverage and liability assumptions based on the knowledge and what solutions against American market exempt platforms for liability with all active measures are taken such to induce platforms to monitor proposals to debate the report because of reduced costs against American foster self-regulation. I have 30 seconds. Okay. I'm good.
I'm sorry.
This is yours.
Oh, it's not.
Oh,
It was just there.
okay. You good? Which branch of the USFG does the plan?
We'll defend Congress.
You'll defend Congress? Okay, what does a contributory trademark liability standard look like?
Sure, the plan means that e-commerce platforms like Amazon have a duty to take proactive measures to prevent counterfeits from being posted.
So what
and sold.
are those measures?
Some of the cards, I think either the Campbell evidence or the Dong evidence talk about AI screening of the platforms, like using AI to determine which products are counterfeit and eliminate those from the platforms itself.
AI screening, does that AI exist in the status quo?
Yes, some platforms are taking steps in the status quo, but not all of them, which is what our internal link is.
Okay, and what did Tiffany do in 2010 to increase counterfeiting?
Sure, the Tiffany standard has shifted the burden to the brand, or to the owners of the trademarks themselves to prove to online e-commerce platforms that they're selling counterfeits, which means that it's like a brand has to go to the platform by itself and say, hey, this thing is counterfeit, can you take it down? Which results in a step-by-step, listing-by-listing enforcement versus a proactive enforcement that the plan would enforce.
I guess with the proactive enforcement, who holds these brands who holds the e-commerce sellers accountable?
We think that enforcement is through Congress. So if
enforcement is through Congress,
if a brand was not following,
keeps track of whether the brands are following, how does Congress create a new agency? Is it still up to the sellers to inform the brands? How does it work?
Well, that's the whole point of the partnership,
So the sellers are still doing the informing and the tracking. You said it's a partnership.
Yeah, we think that the platforms themselves have to take the proactive measures to make sure.
Sure, but who's making sure they're taking the proactive measures? Because obviously you've said they still have. The sellers are making sure.
Normal means is congressional enforcement, which means that.
But what does that look like? Do the Congress people keep track of what eBay who's selling stuff on eBay?
We think that could result in a new agency, a new commission.
A new agency, you feel a new
We don't
agency
fiat
is
that.
created.
That is a likely implementation of the plan.
Okay, that makes sense. You read TechIp that says 7 out of 10 consumers buy counterfeit objects. Then it says in the shrunk part that 2 anti-counterfeiting actions passed Congress in late 2023. That, like, why doesn't that reverse the effects of Tiffany? Because it forces the brands to take proactive measures.
So the shrunken text says the Shop Safe Act was reintroduced to
Well,
Congress
no,
in
it says the
2023.
Inform Act already passed, which holds brands more accountable, and the Shop Safe Act is going to Congress in September.
Okay, the Shop Safe Act was reintroduced. That does not mean
No,
it's
it was
like going to be
passed by
voted on.
Congress in September, though.
Shop Safe was not passed. The Inform Act was passed, but we've read evidence that indicates that the key internal link is
Campbell
like
says that
proactive
15% of electronics are already counterfeit. Why didn't they collapse the grid?
The 1HC evidence indicates that the DoD is able to detect these counterfeits in parts and manage them in the SQO, but counterfeiters get better at deceiving over time, which means the impact is linear.
There you go.
Oh, it's slow.
I think it's 8.
First off, T subsets in means throughout, words and phrases H in mean throughout, violation the app does not trigger the entire trademarks prefer, allowing minute tweaks to each topic, explodes the topic to tiny apps that don't even change the status quo, ending the ground. Next off. T court's interpretation, IPR protections are statutory court and agency action is enforcement, not protection. Crystal Lapo 21. IPR protection and enforcement protection relates to the statute of a country's legislative subject to the interpretation, judiciary, and enforcement application at the discretionary of enforcement agency violation. They enforce voting for limits. They expose the topic to minute legal precedents, creating an impossible research burden, and ground core action deletes core dissets like policies. Also, A-spec action specify their agents. That's key to fairness since we need to have disable links to dissets on an AFI's topic. Next up. The taxes counter plan. The United States federal government should apply corrective taxes as a cost for noncompliance for creating country trademark liability and duty to investigate for online intermediaries. Substituting taxes creates an identical effect but solves better by avoiding legal blowback. That's clear to 17. Regulatory tax law is suitable while making decision economic arguments prevent regulation of economic conditions rather than classifying behavior as legal. Allow legislature to regulate decision-making. Regulation by taxes unlike prohibition ensure lower force regulation, decreasing risk of legal conflicts. Using taxes as a new independent regulatory mainstream them as an instrument to broadly cushion societal response to inevitable ecological, demographic, and political crisis extinction. Butchers 18. Climate or pollution resources below the depletion of biodiversity status of worldwide threats common responsible non-prevent solution condition can be steered, but existing instruments in a new approach to potential taxation or non-understood political crisis or demographic extension could lead to replacing any in a new equilibrium that will be more sustainable legal provision or routine policies discouraging practice of behavioral taxation will be examined as the main subject. There is no consensus on the use of regulatory taxes, so all receivable, but as a part of a more comprehensive mix. Next off. The settler colonialism the plan enables colonial extraction from around Western knowledge systems across the planet. That's Forces 19. Regimes regulating resources where the IP system is not yet, but these are diminishing. Local systems are running invisible. The state-centric paradigm, the global north to see existing structures of these really operate at the level of the IP system colonized. The strategy of common navigation involves the introduction of new property rights geared toward facilitating market system and colonial extractivism in some system and unlocks in an endless cycle suffering. Deadline 24. Extraction to ground modernizes responsible catch-all street colonial cultures and Congress has established the mean to exterminate via economic progress and people ignoring and externalizing the understanding invasion and all structure but invented intense social ecological destruction normalized by bombarding people with subjectivity preserved and extractive bias underestimates the accumulation of extractivism and enables them to processual concerns that maintain colonial mentalities and decolonization solves the lack of racial progress embedded within the language of IP. That's 18. Problem of unjust laws is the problem of distribution power necessary to finance racism and colonial resistance within the context of intellectual property to colonial theory. Undue IP neo-colonial logic can be thought together with other types of critical theory creates a base for complex and multifaceted engagement that the rest of power dynamics and knowledge production. Next off. The inflation is sad, inflation is cooling, and economic fundamentals are strong. Riguber 24. Inflation used for a second time on the hostile sign that acceleration of prices up at the coordinates with the smallest since October. The economy is healthy, unemployment low, hiring robust, consumers are spending, and the plan's liability causes over-enforcement that reduces competition and increases prices. Goldman 22. ShopSafe would control my existing online marketplaces offerings, but the offerings that's per price competition that reduces consumer price rising inflation. Trademark owners must use their new power to broadly restrict legitimate competitive offering in the face of unmanageable legal liability. All the marketplaces are proactively restrict legitimate activity compliance causes to eliminate existing marketplace ability to dictate prices to trademark owners, and inflation escalates global hotspots. Extinction branch 22. Inflation could have deeply coercive effects on the U.S.-led order. Ohio requested scarce supply to cause Russia to inflation aid wide American defense spending and country with the results of revolution kindling inflation compared to the fatal spark as depressing contributed to political upheavals. Inflation is psychologically demoralizing. The U.S. defense budget already adverse at being triggered by inflation as inflation builds up. Pentagon is forced to build that. Inflation may also have nationally geopolitical and a world that are hardly seems stable for war. Next up. The horse trading decided crackdown on AI now solved the PYM S10 610. Justice Department and FTC are gearing up to unleash antitrust on Microsoft, OpenAI, and Nvidia tech behemoths face new scrutiny similar to what the FTC did with the company could have a ripple effect on everything, and Amazon and eBay fight contributory liability less vetting allows a larger seller base, only 20. Congress introduced a bill that would hold online marketplaces responsible for counterfeit products or requirements verifying who the seller is, place of business, and contact information for large marketplaces like Amazon and eBay. This is how Amazon has nearly 600 million SKUs listed half for marketplace sellers, doesn't have an extensive vetting process, and the plan trades off. Link 224. Governments face pressure from interest groups. There's lobby for special interests down the line with our government may pick a battle, do deals with interest groups to provide rights that gives rise to the possibility of corporate route use resources from a deal's ability to see content as potentially important implication for battles on multiple fronts, and consolidation of big tech to create monopolies are an existential threat to democracy. Fuck up my head all 20. Antitrust enforcement is necessary. Unringing the market to announce that the rise of anti-competitive market big tech poses a threat to a well-functioning democracy. Platforms have so much power that they could sway an election affecting political view without consent to platforms and powers like a loaded weapon. The question for democracy, whether it is safe to leave the gun there and another person can pick it up, and democratic origin spurs for more stability ensures global peace. Dominant 19. Authoritarianism or greed for making an increasingly uncertain China would demand suspension in SCS and the Ocean, the Middle East, and the 30 global imposed no democracy, electoral will be treated molded democracy and self-doubting democracy, expanding democracy, crucial for world peace and first, and continuing to Richard to being where democracy go bankrupt, suddenly plunging the world into war. Next off. The advantage counterplan the United States federal government should implement the proposed investment for chips and tendons to subsidize the development of necessary parts for duty defense system and pass H.R. 2026 and pass the 2024 Farm Bill and double the research and development tax credit for qualified business and create an investment tax credit for the agriculture and industry, pass H.R. 209 and increase criminal penalties for illegally purchased timber, wildlife, and natural resources of companies do not increase scrutiny and induce compliance with UNSR 1540, increase nuclear deterrence for law enforcement agencies at port of entry that solves will blip. Supply chain disruption caused a shortage of chip shortage caused by COVID heavily intensive as problem. More products and parts may no longer be available. Military's emphasis on lowest cost rather than quality is a factor, and it solves grid up to 11. Grid Act gives FERC the authority to respond to imminent attack from an ERC. There is strong justification and limited circumstances to arm for vulnerability to the full power system, and it solves agriculture and innovation and food security. Page 23. The new Congress must ask the Farm Bill says more about the importance of the Sign Bill to accelerate tech, increasing productivity, supply, prioritize workplace development, preparing careers in high-tech farming and positioning institutions on top of Congress must take the same approach to ag, and it's all close talk to CFH 21. Organization work to combat abuse of power. We read in support of counter-kleptocracy, also emerging in kleptocracy regime around the world, threatening global political and economic security, absent strong intervention from the U.S. corrupt and kleptocracy regime to continue on power. Democratic government and across the gold. These bills have garnered strong bipartisan support and help turn the tide against authoritarian and kleptocratic regimes, and it solves kleptocracy. Actually, I'll insert the re-highlighting, and it solves her NAS 24. U.S. should lead an international effort to enhance security across global supply systems, deepening cooperation, uniform standards, ensure transportation are used in nuclear materials, international agreement, arrangement for system-wide approach in place. USNR 1540 states required to maintain effective border controls to combat trafficking in nuclear weapons and maintain the delivery market at delivery case. Counterfeit statistics are widely inflated in all cultures as issuers. 23. Statistics inflated or the upper data bound in the meaning figure include copyright, piracy, patent, physical scale of deep, public, mega, mascot, and the status quo all shares. 23. Online intermediaries have established programs that encourage and co-sharing voluntarily provide tools for trademark owners, services for users, suspecting counterfeit content and practice basis. 99% of the time. 3 is that the cyber is done by SolarWinds and thousands of daily attacks, or there's no impact. Steelers 20. Constrict on those who have the ability to launch attack, non-attack, the capability to launch attack that cause physical damage, U.S. ability to unwilling to retaliation known as a reduction from a cyber attack, stable on beyond to stable for self-destruction onset of war, catastrophic scenario, discount the robustness and resilience of quality, present multiple targets and harder to damage people, compensate for nearly damage, including repair, advantage 2. Anti-money laundering enforcement fails, corrected 24. Overall impact of AML intervention is less than 1%, much less than 1% of the percentage of crime launderers you see terrorist funding to circumvent complicated regulatory process, and there's no impact. Monster 14. We state that the clause I mean the threat posed by federal state turned out to be less urgent than the list in honor to serve security powers, they seem very few posed to strategic significance.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'll start. You stopped before the John's Mayer card on the counterfeiting advantage.
Yeah.
And then on the money laundering advantage, you got to the Mazar card.
Yeah.
Got it.
Status of the op.
Unconditional status because there was a logical option.
Can you kick planks?
Yeah.
Okay. Net benefits to everything.
Advantage counterplan, both this adds taxes internal.
Okay. Both disads. How does the counterplans the counterplan grid planks create a new agency that looks over the grid? How does that not trade off with interest through interests in antitrust legislation?
Well, why would it trade off with like Amazon's ability to sell things that they wanted?
That's not the internal link that your dissat is making. The internal link is that interest groups have to make, the Congress has to make concessions to interest groups who do things that they don't, if Congress does things that they don't like. You've read evidence that says we should create more government power over technology like the grid.
Yeah,
How does that not trade off?
I can answer this. The lane tree card is so specific to how groups force trade-offs on related issues. So, i.e., big tech forces trade-offs on other big tech related issues, but they don't care about things like grids because that doesn't affect their ability to sell things. If you read a card that says Amazon hates a new grid,
I want to talk about the lane tree evidence.
Yeah.
Where does it talk about IP or big tech or anything to do with the app?
Okay, a couple of things. It doesn't have to be specific to IP because every other card in the dissat is, but two, it talks about the government structure writ large and how it functions, like how lobbying works. If you're going to contest the fact that big tech is going to lobby, you can do that, but the internal link card does not have to be specific to IP.
That's fine. I want to talk about the Fukuyama evidence. It's from 4 years ago. Big tech has consolidated it since then. What's the time frame for the internal link?
Well, a couple of things. The uniqueness card talks about new mergers such as i.e. Nvidia, Amazon getting more stuff, Facebook acquiring virtual reality and going into that sector. So obviously now is the time frame.
Now is the time frame.
Well, not now, but obviously it's getting worse. Big tech is consolidating more than they were in 2020.
Okay, that's fine. The first T violation, what's the case list?
For subsets?
Yeah.
We think that any app that protects the entire area plus a variety of processes or mechanisms to do so.
Okay, that's fine. Can any trademark item be put on e-commerce platforms?
Actually, status of the all.
I already asked that.
Yeah, they asked.
It's fine. They can kick class.
Yeah.
Back to my question. Can any trademarked item be put on e-commerce platforms?
Well, we think that there's a distinction because obviously it's not a question
So
of whether
no.
it can be put on the platforms, but yeah.
Okay. Oh, whoops. The 2AC should be in the... Okay, is everybody good for an order? Okay, consensus is yes. The counterfeiting advantage, the money laundering advantage, T subsets, T enforcement, the K, the taxes counterplan, the advantage counterplan, the inflation DA, the horse trading DA. Okay, I'll say it one more time. The counterfeiting advantage, the money laundering advantage, T subsets, T enforcement, the K, the taxes counterplan, the advantage counterplan, sorry, the inflation disad, the horse trading disad. Is everybody good? Ava and Gabby, are you good?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to assume everybody's good. On the counterfeiting advantage, what is it when extended to Cape? Evidence that says 70% of consumers have bought counterfeit goods and extended Campbell. Evidence that says all we need to witness that the DoD is buying goods and 1 and C2. The status quo doesn't solve. They're highlighting just says that some companies are implementing measures, not all. 1 and C. 3 extended Campbell. Evidence throw an impact defense that doesn't assume counterfeiting because that snowballs on the money laundering advantage. 1 and C1. The plan solves by increasing enforcement and closing the loopholes. That was a Camel. Evidence 1 and C2. Yes, there's an impact extend the DISIC. Evidence that says that weak states cause lash out and they're bad at dealing with crisis. Also, they dropped the food scenario on T subsets. 1, we beat A, textually the arbitrary standard. B, functionally the plan, increase the protection for all trademarks. 2, counter interpretation in needs subset KC. And 9, 8, as if within the bounds of it is required completely inside of 3, preferred A, predictability. Our interpretation is the most logical and excludes their interpretation. B, ground their interpretation if it depicts C, if only the counter interpreters are off, solves limits off as D, functional limits to deterrence. And the econ DA solve E, reasonability computing in terms of race at the bottom is subset crowd. Now on T enforcement 1, we beat A, functionally increasing coverage and a rapid activities or trademark owners doesn't increase enforcement and its conference be textually at least arbitrary standard and to counter-interpretation nation strengthen IPR protection through settings cover duration remedies or enforcement IPTI and Park in 21 the index is capture the strength of the natural IPR while the index is the coverage membership of treaties and procedures which aggregate for IPR regimes or if they provide protection for subject matter for each IPR and 3 preferred A predictability B is the most comprehensive IPR index cited by the literature B Afghan the Congress counterpoint is unbeatable and present advantages are key C cross-apply counter-interpretation are FD functional limits check E cross-apply presentability F USFT is our agent further specification is no resolution basis that's unpredictable arbitrary least about agent counterpoint center research default to reasonability and our interpretations that we must specify the words of the word solution context highlighting words in tax check now on the K1 framework A only evaluate arguments of the plaintiffs any alternative source of serving and progressive which takes to AC predictability and offensive possible compared to the material consequences of the efficacy of the alpha the all is the only holistic way to evaluate prior question 2 word both federal action is inevitable and can coexist with the alt movement mobilization and knowledge protection 3 part of the alt 4 part of the app and clarify that the 1 sees the central policy of the progressive agenda that's also K5 the impact debate A extinction outweighs spelling side is irreversible which recludes any alternative within the life including the KB there impact card is about material infrastructure which the app does not mandate the building of and 6 the link debate A it's all about the other 1 does not create new forms of property rights or changes existing law B progress impossible tribal protection copyright protection for original works of music literature and art 7 all cancel A it doesn't do the app B it must be limited to private domestic actors anything else words Afghan C the right paradigm is imperfect better than a total break from modernity China and 23 decoloniality has no meaning used as a status quo anti-decolonial project is complex and unavoidable it does not decolonize and establish hegemony over metropolitan order with its imperializing and colonizing history China an example decolonization development claim not only decolonial mission but what of authenticity work is secret in the name of a Russian authenticity returning to Africa decolonial project it is that of authenticity was the right situation of a reverse instance now the Texas counterpoint 1 per devotion is only to the benefit A standalone regulatory taxes are unsustainable only the personal budgets any limitation barriers should not be overlooked people like taxes you see as an illegal revenue tax and energy need a long-term politically reform or object reverse downside overcome by using mixes 2 part of the counterpoint 3 part of the counterpoint over other issues the permits are inserted below A liability B online intermediary C counterpoint could be actually and functionally that's key to Afghan research or cash for it can't solve A as offshore and Yandi and 21 any changes the CIT may have to be internationally there would be major incentives for cooperations to flee the reform barrier and such a competitive rates modification proposed that Yandi may fall short of aiming of taxing wealthy owners only at the top of the sector will be captured by anti-monopolistic tax B IRS Huang in 20 Irish funding is super cut by 21% the number of South fallen by 31% audit rate is fallen by 45% 441 billion in taxes owed is not paying steep decline audit stem from underfunding 6 no impact A not even 20 degrees of warming against extinction or in 20 effects include scarcity disease acidification non-threat extinction evidence is mixed past cases of rapid warming don't see a loss of biody even with 20 degrees of warming there would be coastal and elevated regions that would have noticed by the 10th threshold there would remain large areas of which civilization would continue B can't solve China the idea will follow on now the advantage kind of plan 1 part devotion is linked to the benefit 2 part of the counterpoint 3 part of the app and any combination of the planks 4 it can't solve plank 1 can't solve the root cause infinite funding of regulatory changes keep the government locked into playing whack-a-mole with adversaries which trades off with the momentum required to solve the antitrust DA plank 2 can't solve the acquisition of funding through illicit e-commerce platforms ODC Campbell says the e-commerce is the key factor for finding kleptocratic regime plank 3 terrorists are building nukes in the US they can't solve revision states or non-state actors building nukes and non-compliance errors group the grid planks passing legislation can't solve Shepherd X agency power the only thing that the act does is create a new agency to manage the government the courts will shake down any action taken by those agencies and the Farm Bill can't solve ag the faint evidences of the IoT integration is the only thing that can support the transition to Ag 4.0 which is the key to solving the incoming population boom 5 later than a net benefit lobbyists are going to like new agencies and policies are inflationary 6 it's the next burden to prove the place to rise to the threshold of absolvency and condos of voter propensity office because it can kick or fiat out of it that skews our strategy just was best because it enables app choice which creates a race at the top for research 1 C strategy and 2 C choice the inflation DA 1 non-unique inflation is high now retail sales grew but passion 24 consumers willing to financial pinch sales by the birds of May Americans feeling the weight of lingering inflation retail sales are cool about the strength of the economy sales load households inflation and slow rise in income and 2 worker consumes prices are so high consumers won't notice the difference will curve spending 3 impairs 50s 70s 80s and oh wait all proof inflation doesn't have an impact 4 no link that construction knowledge is flexible and sure for the business shop safe evidence doesn't apply those are dong and bursting evidence 5 inflation doesn't hurt duty readiness hard done and 22 inflation must be put in context the panic overseeing massive increases panic offsetting the separate track with inflation that is when subject to inflation higher fuel prices for more efficient use of energy military spending is a unique category that doesn't mirror the CPI and 6 no causal link between the level of inflation the app causes a nuke war 7 no leadership impact empirics but was in 20 the world remained equally peaceful when the US got forced through the 90s as well as double spending has been unrelated to stability the US can be counted on not to your to so through most wars Africa is peaceful something for which hedge cannot take credit stability exists in many places to which hedge does not extend 8 brands doesn't get to an impact there's no war 9 only risk of the turn secondary liability sensation reduces enforcement costs against counterfeiting quickly. And 22, platforms develop tools to monitor and mitigate illegal activities, introducing liability for intermediaries like acceptable reduction in force and cost of the manufacturer liability will result in substantial force and savings for the company, which is the manufacturer rather than multiple researchers. Now the horse trading DA. 1. No impact. A. The apps also access a larger interlinking similar illicit economies that enable cryptocurrency co-op states of their countries undermining democracies. B. Other countries all payments. And 7.1. NVIDIA tortures the antitrust violations in France. NVIDIA triggers scrutiny from around the world. Company disclosed the EU China first saw info on its graphic cards. France cited the risk of abuse by chip company NVIDIA face scrutiny in Europe. 2. No interlink. A. The FTC fails structural constraints for callback. And 24. Capacity of antitrust agencies is deficient appropriation unsuited to the agenda. Civil service compensation denies the FTC ability to retain professionals and adequate number of specialists whose expertise is essential to execute big tech agenda. And B. Fukuyama concedes that big tech isn't a threat yet that justifies the permutation. C. The threat of litigation does not deter giants and the suits are unlikely to be ruled against big tech. Rosenberg. And 322. Government wants to stop big tech giants haven't gotten the message. Lawsuits haven't made time shire about gobbling up smaller companies through the first way adjusted tactics. Google and Apple view extensive legal defense as a bearable cost antitrust trial. So done little. 3. Perm, a logical policymaker could do both the plan and the decide for its thumb controls and trench slippment. And 227. Big tech are more powerful than past monopolists. They've been preparing for years. Companies are about that gain access to content. Companies are licensing, scraping, or leveraging data that they control. Even with a pro-competition policy like we will see consolidation around existing gatekeepers, robust public sector investments in lowering barriers to entry to AI. 5. No link. A. Normal means is the bottom of the pocket. B. Lobbyists don't change policy. Structural weaknesses looting or less in potency. Bomber. And 3. Interest groups fragile. Interest coincided divergent entities excluded block legislative changes, including non-legislative means. Goldilocks problem group must be brought to prevent objection, but narrow proposal not defeated legislative companies comment under caution. Efficacy interest groups are competent between disintegration and ineffective reform, and courts will strike it down. Saska. And 2. Well-vetted appointed antitrust regulators, including recent lawsuits in court, highlight the need to pass new legislation, change of laws require Congress. Or does that say Congress? Yeah, it does. Congress. Isabel will send that out. I'm good for cross whenever.
That was on the antitrust DA.
Yeah.
Again. Reasons to reject besides condo.
That's it.
Okay, sure. T, you said, quote unquote, the Congress counterplan is unbeatable. How is that germane to our interpretation?
Because we think, for team enforcement?
Yeah.
Well, because your interpretation says that,
like, our interpretation says you have to be Congress. How on earth does the Congress counterplan compete under that?
Oh, sorry. Wait, can you say your statement again?
We said you have to be Congress. You said the Congress counterplan is unbeatable. How does the Congress counterplan compete under an interpretation where AFs have to be Congress?
Actually, you can just scratch that. But we need your interpretation because we said we were Congress anyway.
Okay, sure. I guess that makes sense. I want to talk about the taxes counterplan.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think the impact to offshoring is?
The counterplan can't solve the net benefit or the affirmative. If companies just, offshore their counterfeiting, that means that, they won't be held liable by the taxes, which means we can't solve any of the environmental impacts you've described. It also means...
But wouldn't the companies still be, U.S.-based? So even if, they're online, how does offshoring affect enforcement?
Because the U.S. does not have jurisdiction to, create this tax and then, enforce it for
So
example.
large companies have, centers over... they have businesses overseas that they can just offshore to.
I guess that would make sense if it was brick and mortar stores, but I'm confused
No,
how that applies in electronic commerce.
Yeah, e-commerce websites have businesses and headquarters overseas. They could just shift all their operations over there, which means that they would not be subject to the taxes the counterplan is creating.
Amazon is not just in the US.
Inflation, I guess the Bartage card says they are rising at the Bartage card says they rose decreased inflation. I guess, why do you think this is an AF card?
The Bartage evidence says that, quote, Americans are feeling the weight of lingering inflation, which means we think that's also a predictive claim.
Okay. It said sales had been forecasted to rise 0.2%, but they only rose 0.1%. Why do you think that's a reason that inflation is rising?
Because you just answered your own question. You said it was rising.
It's rising? Okay.
It is still rising, which means that...
that makes sense. The Medeo card, how is this, I guess, a link to red? It says it's about companies litigation. Why does that
I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Sorry, we can pause. We can pause. Okay.
Okay, we have 30 seconds left.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm good.
The Medeo card is about legislation. Why does that apply to a link about over-enforcement?
Wait. The LeFou?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. We think that, the cost of the app would not be significant because the result of the affirmative means that the people would only have to sue the manufacturer rather than like multiple infringers.
Okay, sure. I guess that makes sense. The solvency deficit on the advantage counterclaim is fine actually.
Top of the last must affect the entire topic area. That's words and phrases. 281 plan text in vacuum doesn't apply since they don't have the word in it. Doesn't modify trademark search as their definition. 282. They're probably the half that violate subsets most of the pack because they have a small subset of trademark to be protected. The only affect trademarks online since not all trademarks. Since 20C Bernstein says that protection already exists for brick and mortar stores. 2AC3 the counter interprets words 1 limits they allow for tiny f's that increase protection of a tiny area of property like biotech, computer programming, or types of machines, and we need a data everyone to education on the topic with no topic to use or counterplans. This decreases education because teams resort to process counterplans to solve tiny f's that create sealed debates that don't test the core controversy of the resolution. We see 4 predictability is a non-starter. 1 link turn words and phrases states the strongest law in the globe and divides in a specific legal term of art. 2 sliding scale predictability is a yes no but a question of internal links, so they must win a large one through community norm solve. They shape what's predictable to 2 4 limits turn into smaller topic areas more predictable. 2 5 no Afghan argument. 1 structural advantage is like infinite preference and last patient. F trace means that F will always find new strategies to try to maintain engagement on a topic that generics 2 debatability first, even if they're more predictable from the best model for debate. 3 we don't take any ground any trademark F that affects the entire area, such as increasing the duration or strength of protection that allows them to read counterfeiting of laundering advantages but gives a stable DA links and counterpunch competition. The only RF counter interp is wrong because it completely destroys any sort of education and creates sale debates that with only 1 F, and it doesn't solve any of the limits to offense because it still links to our it still violates our interp. 7 no functional limits don't exist. They can expand trademarks to apply to any tiny area. The only way to create the predictable neg ground is with a stable F mechanism, which only our interp and provides. 3C a reasonability per for competing interp objectively compares models which is prior to norms or reasonability even if they aren't. That was above. Go to the advantage counterclaim. 2AC1 permittive links to the net benefit still includes contributory liability, which is linked to econ. 2AC2 the counterplan and planner distinct 1 textually doesn't increase IPR2 functionally no changing the liability standard. 2AC3 but cross apply do both answers to perm condo still creates contributory liability, and we get new answers when they spec. 2AC4 it solves the entirety of the F. I'm going to go through each advantage. First, it solves growth and cyber. That's 1AC Campbell and Upton. 1 investment in chips and subsidizing development for DoD system solves for supply chain disruptions that leave military and goods without necessary parts, so we don't have to risk counterfeits while buying replacements. That solves the root cause better because there's no need to purchase e-commerce. 2C our second HR 5026 gives FERC the authority to respond to an attack by protecting vulnerabilities in the squad. The act doesn't just create a new agency, so the shred for on deficit doesn't matter. It increases the ability of an existing agency resources to develop updated grids. It solves ag innovation and food insecurity. That's 1AC FAIN. They point to FAIN as the solvency deficit, but it definitely has alternative ways to solve. 1 the Farm Bill increases U.S. ag production and strengthens the supply chain, and 2 tax credits allow crop growers to have more resources to pour into both growing more crops and innovating their tech. It solves kleptocracy. That's 1AC Luna and FH1 HR 5209 is the Counter-Kleptocracy Act that exposes and counteracts regimes globally through strong U.S. interventions. It takes an active stance instead of the passive AML to all causes. 1AC Luna is clear that illegally purchased timber, wildlife, and natural resources all cause authoritarianism equal to laundering, and we solve other internal links. They drop that they are all causes and a solvency take out to the F. It also solves terror. That was 1AC NAS, compliance with UN SCR 1540, and increasing glare detection training for law enforcement agents at ports of entry is the recommendation of their impact evidence, so don't buy any solvency deficits, and enhances international efforts across all supply systems by preventing trafficking of nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons. It solves globally through the Department of State collaboration with the IMO. 2AC5 it does not link to the net benefit. First, I'm not going for antitrust. That's going to be kicked in the 1 and R, so that doesn't matter, but it doesn't link to inflation. They have no carded evidence how it would cause inflation, just as policies are inflationary, which is a claim without a warrant. So we get new answers when they spec, but anyway, you should prefer the 1 card that was read in the debate, which is a link to their apps, so it definitely links harder to the affirmative, which proves that inflation would outweigh anyway. But 2AC6, everything I did above proves that we do solve sufficiently, but use sufficiency framing. The net benefit outweighs non-quantifiable deficits. Solvency is a sliding scale. Condo will be in the 1 and R. Go to case. Counterfeiting is exaggerated. That's 1 and C1. It's written with mathematical problems. Most use the upper range and outer bound found isn't a median figure, which takes out both advantages since the internal link is counterfeiting. Prefer our evidence. It excludes copyright and patent infringement, which skew data because the app only solves trademarks. That's sure as quo. Solves 2 bills already passed Congress. 1 AC Tech If 23 Team AJ and counterfeiting actions Congress. Passing Informed Consumers Act designed to increase transparency and reduce fake goods sold online. The Shop Safe Act incentivizes platforms to vet solution holds platforms accountable for counterfeit ops, but no cyber impact. That's Lewis. 1, it's done by SolarWinds and thousands of daily attacks. First is motivation. Attacks are easily attributable. No one wants to risk retaliation, especially Russia, China, and North Korea. 2, no escalation. There's high degrees and control of operational risk. 3, empirics. No one in history has ever died from a cyber attack. 4, repair. Vulnerabilities are quickly rebuilt, preventing breakdown. It's them. They're already in the supply chain, and the impact is just injury and high repair costs. 1 AC. Campbell 23 tampered microelectronics have already infiltrated the supply chain. Failures resulting in severe injuries and millions of dollars in damage. EV stations, power devices, and telecommunication equipment are not affected by solely chips. 1 AC. Any attacks originate from external devices, EV stations, power storage devices, or telecommunication equipment. Difficulty and no impact anyway. 1 AC. Roach 21 myth that cyber weapons can be made. They need to prove knowledge and specific equipment, no capabilities, like the engineering skills to develop a weapon. Cyber attacks against the U.S. are unlikely, would be primitive. No threat to escalation. Barriers solved at 1 AC. Adenuga 23. There's no threat of nuclear Armageddon. I think that was 5 minutes because parties observe restraints. Go to the impact. No food wars. VSBA team Little Merit that food increases conflict. Conflict requires people have means and will. Most in starvation are not in position to resort to violence. This into more complex link to land corruption, democratic reforms, and econ research show while the media tend to seek resource explanations debate are complex. They just said we dropped food insecurity but didn't extend an impact, so you shouldn't give one to the one air because that causes late-breaking debates. But anyway, risk is capped at 0.1%. 1 AC, CHF 21 catastrophes risk, human extinction 0.1% risk of food production loss, extinction, global warming, crop disease, pandemic, loss of pollinators, failures of infra hemp space weather. It'll never escalate. Cliff 16 research does not indicate a link between food and conflict. Many countries face food shocks without conflict. It would be too simplistic to suggest it was the primary driver. Whether countries, institutions providing help to citizens affected. This is the difference in Haiti versus Mexico or the Philippines. Institutional strength that existed. Food shocks did not deteriorate national security. Go to the money laundering advantage. All causes and can solve globally. 1 AC Luna 21 activities enabling illicit economies. Oh wait, sorry. We read all causes on the advantage counterplan, cross-apply that to case, but no kleptocrats impact. It's an academic meme refuted by consensus. None have geostrategic significance, and there's no correlation between weakness and klept. That's bizarre. All causes U.S. shell companies that are the largest kleptocrats in the world and are unresolved by the app, but there are also all causes to terrorists, politics, ideologies, and economic failure. Counterfeiting isn't the only internal link. The impact to terrorism is small, and they won't go nuclear. Mueller and Stewart 21 and 8 terrorist attacks inflicted destruction nuclear terrorist warnings. Proven active terrorists failed to go nuclear. No one has gone anywhere near. Require shots and corrupted collaborators obtaining a highly guarded material, setting up top scientists, and rolling the product into position while attracting no attention. Nor have terrorist groups been able to steal weapons. Have not been able to control leaders to palm off one of them. Terrorists remain. Terrorist numbers remain small. The determination limited. The competence poor. And Johnson only cites the Cargill standoff, which did not escalate. Concedes no impact or inevitable. 1 AC NAS 24 does not foresee nuclear terrorist attack. Pressure of other security challenges along with resource constraints make it difficult for defense communities to sustain effort managing terrorism. Way too many obstacles. Mueller's 20 terrorist groups exhibited limited progress in going atomic to receive bomb. It's highly improbable. Too many risk considerable damage to the donor bomb would be discovered. Loose nukes is unlikely that any of those devices have been lost. Mark the last card in the doc at lost.
Okay.
I don't think you said about the first Mueller card.
It was in the one in. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good?
Yeah.
On T, you said words and phrases is the most widely cited definition. The 1 and C card says that justices of the peace have jurisdiction in the respective countries. Are definitions of justices of the peace's jurisdiction widely cited in IPR literature?
Hold on, let me. No, Casey's not about the justices citing it.
Oh, no, the words and phrases card says, quote, justices of the peace shall have jurisdiction in their respective counties. I'm confused. Is this widely cited in IPR literature?
Well, I mean, if justices are the ones citing it, and this is definitely a legal topic, then I do think that justices citing it would be really
It's talking about
predictable.
justices of the peace and where they have jurisdiction. Is that widely cited in, like, how is that relevant to IPR literature?
No, it's defining in, and it's talking about justices having cited it. I think that's predictable. I mean, it is a legal topic.
Okay, the advantage counterplan.
Yeah.
The Farm Bill provides tax credits, which allows farmers to do what?
It probably allows them to develop the same type of technology that the like IoT integration and increase their ability to develop that technology because they have more resources to buy more things.
Okay.
Also, 1AC Fein like points to this as being able to solve it. Your solvency deficit was 1AC Fein is like necessary to be looked at. We looked at 1AC Fein, and this is what the evidence pointed to.
The HR 5026. What does that do?
That was it gives FERC the authority to respond to an attack by protecting vulnerabilities in the status quo.
So it gives them
devolves more money to them to be able to protect like cyber and grid.
Okay, so the attack happens and then they can do something about it?
Not just that, but they're able to like they pour more money into actually protecting the grid before the attack happens as well.
Okay. The counterfeiting advantage, you said there were high degrees of control in like the grid / critical infrastructure. What are those high degrees?
On the cyber stuff?
Yeah. Like what does the current like safety mechanisms look like?
So a couple things the Lewis evidence points to. It's actually really good on this question. There are like operational checks internationally that like ensure people are not going to fire nuclear weapons if our grid is attacked. Also, vulnerabilities are quickly rebuilt because there's already like sufficient funds in the status quo that prevent breakdown of grids.
Okay, the tampered parts are already in the supply chain. If like this card exists, why would that not mean the DoD knows tampered parts exist?
No, it means that if there's 15% of the parts are tampered with, that means that if your impact is linear, either you have no idea when it's going to happen because 15% of the parts are already counterfeit, or it should be thumped because no one's attacked yet, and they've still managed to put counterfeit parts in.
Okay, we'll take 8 minutes.
Oh, I already got one. Taxes, K, advantage counterplan inflation, or horse trading inflation.
Taxes, pay, condo, antitrust, enforcement, or inflation.
Yeah. Taxes, K, horse trading, advantage counterplan inflation. Okay. Is everyone good? Are you guys good? Okay. Taxes concede the pyramid to test a competition. K concede the pyramid to test a competition, not offense. Horse trading concede to AC1. Other countries fill in. That takes out any offense advantage. Counterplan. We counterintuit. We get we did what we did, but condo is good. Innovation. Debaters are risk averse. Having a fallback. Try to law. Breaking the new art such as keto year-long education. Neglect. Gaps to pick the focus debates. We need an option to compensate for reactionary ground info processing. Multiple option for 2AC efficiency and best offensive with forces focus the debate and increases critical thinking. Idea flex. Only way to read a K and accountable in the same room. George judges a referee. They don't set norms for debate all year, but if he didn't do anything uniquely bad, don't vote us down. Time skew are inevitable. Topicality, expect K, dissets K. Strategy is non-unique. Every next strategy relies on interfering with abstract. Dispo doesn't solve it functionally on condo. They can force to an arts inflation. Inflation outweighs the collapses of Germany by exploding in energy and defense prices, war sparking global political upheaval that destroyed deterrence and risk group power. Word time frame comes forward, and inflation immediately disrupts supply chain and causes instability. That is Rugerberg preferred time frame makes control stays in the prerequisite in terms of case it outweighs case time signal weakens to come faster than material solvency means we structurally come first with our escalation. Scenario B is that the link alone turns case small companies resort back to selling counterfeit goods in hopes of keeping the brand alive. C is DoD shortages. Inflation makes them too expensive and the DoD can't afford it. D, food security department don't want to waste money on increased cost of new farm supply. E is that it turns terrorism and kleptocracy. People like worst leaders in time of crisis. Now to AC1. I'll do the uniqueness debate here. Inflation is cooling. One is that linked to control the direction of uniqueness. The only risk that half makes it worse. Two is structural factors. Low unemployment, stable spending. Times three is trends. Core index shows it's been easing for months. We're more predictive since he analyzes the Fed for predictive and analyzed evidence that price and future challenges instead of snapshot. The core CPI per Sarah via 24. A key measure of inflation up down the so we call CPI cooling to the slow stage. More than 3 years. The figures represent the only stage, the early stages of inflation resuming a downward trend, and we're on track for soft landing around in order to earn 21.4 for the second 3 months. CPI was cooler, so then inflation might be back on a downward trend the first 3 months. So here's the price per the root selling. Then second quarter appears mentioned for the soft landing. Looking at year over year inflation edge down as well. 3 is that Yellen agrees February 625. Yellen agrees reserve headed to 2% soft landing. Does not see the basis for recession refers to reserving to a caution against rates. If Yellen sees president normalizing expect inflation go back 2%, reducing policy to see result in inflation rate probably increase it to return inflation now. 2AC 1 is wrong. Bartosz doesn't assume a Fed efforts to curb things in and now, and it concedes the economy is stable. Insert 3 highlighting. 2AC 2 is wrong. Rigober says quote overall inflation is cooling. It does not say that it is stable. Now the thumpers are wrong because conditions are different today. That is Alden 22. The fourth major economies have proven depth of finding ways to cooperate at the time and the lucky trade might found Libya, Russia, Ukraine, war, inflation, Georgia, to COVID, supply, and chain on might be the serious because of the law of the reads as a collective response of many more countries have been more rich enough to wield influence. Cut it at influence now to AC4. I'll do the link debate here. The plan causes rapid inflation, trademark bullying owners, litigate small businesses into oblivion to restrict competitive offerings and dictate prices. That's gold. It stifles new businesses and raises consumer prices. Picture 22. Big tech engagement and anti-competitive practice suits demonstrate how big tech prevails of a trademark to file malware for frivolous suits and bold intent to raise prices for U.S. consumer, decreasing quality, excluding economics, effectively allows opposite tech as no competitor to adopt to produce and policy services that similar. Only large companies can bear the full cost of enforcement. Engine 20. Even under the current balance, the purchase contributed liability to high cost of monitoring are seen as an advantage, imposing more liability on platforms and entrenched incumbents require more online brokers to wear war against counterfeiting would drive these retailers out of business. 3 is counterfeit goods that are key to reducing consumer costs by creating incentive to undercut, keeping prices lower. 4 is perception. Businesses immediately fear being outcompeted and raise prices. 6 is cost distribution. Brand owners are better. That's frame 22. Brand owners are better. Cost distributors in marketplaces must absorb the cost of pre-leasing compensation for infringement. The cost would likely be borne by every future since such cuts would likely be distributed across all goods. Dong. I did. Okay. I said concede
okay,
yeah.
sorry.
2AC4 is wrong. Dong is wrong. It is not about what is happening. Trademark companies are not buying things to resell. That they just ask online sellers to take them out or to take them off. 2 is consumer feedback, online monitoring, and serial numbers to solve the need to buy the product for. So the internal link defense is wrong. It doesn't assume the rising political distrust and fractures in the supply chain. That is brands, even if it pushes for more reusable energy. This happens first. 2AC6 is not an argument. It's a claim. It's just a claim. But inflation wrecks had Germany all across by the overview and readiness over 22. Inflation hurts national defense. The DoD is particularly vulnerable to sudden inflation because of lengthy budget and acquisition budgets. It's administered the department purchasing power and will undermine the readiness of our forces and the timely deployment of our new operations and the significant cut to the DoD or apps on the fields of supply chain challenges with the impact on inflation and contract and non-addressed firms that have chosen to may exit the defense industrial base. Now 2AC7 is a fallacy. Just because something has peaceful, fallacy is a fallacy. Just because something has been peaceful in the past doesn't mean that it will continue. 2 is scope. Rapid inflation would make the full line not peaceful. 3 it concedes that doubling spending has continued the peace. Now 2AC8 their brands definitely does get to an impact. It says quote unquote the fatal spark would be to go war. Now 2AC9 in love Medio is wrong. It says that companies would save money for trademarking. The link is about these companies killing other competition. The cost of enforcement would be greater than enforcement. I'm gonna finish the conditions are different card. Starting in this crisis. In this crisis, the world might be condemned to a series of competing and partial responses. The U.S. and its allies are actively working to damage Russia's economy through sanctions. Russia is responding by blocking shipments of Ukrainian grain.
728.
We'll start now.
Okay. The order is Advantage 1, counterfeiting. Advantage 2, money laundering. The Topicality. The Advantage counter plan. The inflation discount. Yeah, it's Advantage 1, counterfeiting. Advantage 2, money laundering. Topicality.
You gotta stop. That's annoying.
The Advantage counter plan. Inflation. I see that more people have arrived. Advantage 1, counterfeiting. Advantage 2, money laundering. Topicality. The Advantage counter plan. The inflation DA. Actually, I'm gonna take 1 second to pray. That was 15 seconds, so
3:10.
3:10. The order is the same. Is everybody good? Action, reaction, spirals, always cyber attacks are critical infrastructure, so involved in mutual attacks and escalated nuclear contact. Conflict followed disperses joining other great powers, escalating the global war that's at a nuclear. They drop that the only vector of internal link that matters is whether or not the DoD has access to counterfeits, even if it doesn't, even if the app doesn't solve all counterfeits. Enable evidence that e-commerce platforms are uniquely key to the DoD getting counterfeits in the first place, which means that if we solve it, if our solvency is true, then we get the impact. And yes, cyber impact, they drop action, reaction, spirals. That was above, which means that even if cyber attacks are the core cause of extinction, it still wasn't a nuclear war. Nuclear weapons launches because the perception of attacks on weapon system means that states will respond in Louis and we are both extremely outdated, so you should prefer our evidence such as from 2023 and 2024, which assumes recent capabilities. So you can possibly want to see NAS here. The only one I'm going to extend is that terrorists will blame states for cyber attacks for supply and it takes the defense because their defense is only about state actors, not about terrorists blaming other state actors for launches. Nuclear war can see that there's no impact to fear, not advantage. You can see that there's no impact to terrorism or kleptocracy. I'm not going for it on topicality. Extend KC90 means within the balance. It does not require everything inside of it. And the affirmative means this because it applies to some trademarks which does not solve their deficits. It always said rounded out ways because they're interpreting to infinite pigs. Those are bad for first fairness, forces the app to debate against itself. These actors proving their own advocacy due to lack of research available. And two is education. There is debate. Yeah, it's such a problem that there's no way based with in-depth controversies for two ways to find deficits, which means that two ways lose every debate, which wrecks equitable division of ground. That's the only internal integrating years with the vigilant debates. Three is regressive justifies penny, same as penny, or release counterplates that don't ever substantially test the apple. Answer 30 even tier, but the app has no structural advantage. Process counterplates with the block checks. Debatability is arbitrary and subjective. There's no bright line, which means you should just prefer an interp. The counter term solves limits off it. Sounds above functional limits do exist. Sweet, generous, infinite process counterplates. Every core counterplate that 40 just put out it. You can understand reasonability default to it if you determine that our interpretation solves a sufficient amount of their offense. This is saying 8 years with the fiber debates. Vote app. It's the only way to prevent teams from evading topic research. The advantage counterplate. I only need to win the permutation and then it doesn't solve greater cyber because those are the only effects. I extend the permutation. It shields the inflation data because both the plan and the counterplate reduce cost. That was the Lefulu evidence from the Tweezy and they can't solve. They drop the root cost deficit, infinite funding, regulatory changes, keep the government locked into playing whack-a-mole with adversaries, which I talked about the momentum needed, or which which definitely increases cost because the government will have to keep taking people to court, or brands will have to keep taking people to court. That increases the cost of business. That increases the cost of doing business, which means that those costs get passed on to consumers, which means that it definitely links to the net benefit. And you can also accept the Chevron deficit. They dropped it. The only thing that the grid plug says is that it gives the agency new powers from 2021, which doesn't assume the Chevron decision. And the only thing the act does is empower that agency, but the courts will strike down any action taken by those agencies because Chevron means that the agencies no longer have power. That means they cannot solve the grid impact and inflation data. The link debate extend on and mercy because Chevron knowledge is flexible and shared increases the amount of liability a company is responsible for scaled and dependent on factors like revenue and sales numbers. That means it doesn't price out smaller businesses, which is a terminal link defense. All the new links that Gabby read in the one in our meeting, smaller marketplaces have less extensive burdens and don't have to raise their prices and no data supports willing for existing safeguards solved. Google and Standard 13 for trademark ruling found that empirical evidence was lacking. The ITI and NTA during the remedies available for aggressive assertion of trademarks as sufficient inside the availability section of the deterrence to declare their judgments and reference for safe responses. This is rally, public support, and publicly shared. Overly aggressive mark on it. The only turns case analysis done was on the link debate. So if we know that there's no link, then it can't turn case. I'll answer the link turn explicitly here. There's no link turn to the cybers. It is decided because the Lefulu evidence says the plan with lower costs for the government to buy legitimate goods instead of counterfeit goods. Also did that contextualization on the advantage counterplay, the uniqueness debates, and Bartash. Oh wait, back on the link debate. On the perjured evidence, you can classify the antitrust contention. The link is about big tech and other big tech consolidation. and inflation is high. Their metric burrows at 7-Eleven and outdates all of their evidence. Rising costs for goods and services continue to pressure people's wallets. Economists forecast inflation increase by 0.1%. The bottom line due to CPI reports that prices are still rising at a rate not seen in generations. Food prices increased 0.2% last month after a rise of 0.1% in May. Apparel prices rose 0.1% last month. And no deputy impact empiric statistical analysis proves that there's no historical correlation between unipolarity and stability. Means like Africa remained peaceful in spite of, not because of, American military presence. That's the Bedouin evidence. The cost perception, back on the link debate, the cost perception link is stopped because of the inflation, because of the uniqueness debate. Consumers already see that prices are going up, which means that the link is not unique. That's the only thing I have to answer.
Huh? Yeah. It's inflation, the advantage counter plan, the counterfeiting advantage. Oh, is everyone good? Okay. Inflation outweighs. It collapses hegemony by expanding energy and defense prices while sparking global political upheavals that destroy deterrence and cause great power war. Nuclear exchange decimates the globe. Time frame should come first. When conceded, inflation immediately disrupts supply chains and causes instability. That's the Rebuttals evidence. Time frame controls Turing's case and is a prereq to Turing's case. At first, it causes small companies to resort to buying. It causes small companies to resort to buying, counterfeit goods, which triggers the case, but also they drop that the impact itself turns both advantages. They didn't go for food insecurity, so that doesn't matter, but it does turn grids. Inflation causes an increase in DoD chip shortages because it makes chips too expensive and the DoD doesn't afford them, even if they win some sort of link defense. They said that we only have links turning case, but we do have the impact turning case, which means that this, when dropped, that means that the dissent definitely outweighs an advantage that they've dropped. Every re-highlighting of what I see evidence of inflation is cooling now. First, link controls uniqueness, only the risk that the app makes it worse. Second is structural factors, low unemployment and stable spending proof. Third is trends. Core index shows it's been easing for months. We are outcarding them 7-3. Proves that you should prefer our evidence. They said that that recency is the most important metric, but we have read a card from 2 days ago and their card is from 3 weeks ago. So if you prefer recency, then you default to the Mood Connie card that says that the PCE price index agrees with all of the stuff that or that the uniqueness is increasing now. They have conceded that none of their evidence is predictive. Structural factors like unemployment means that inflation will decrease in the coming months. That's Rebuttals. They have also conceded that Faboro evidence, which quotes Yellen saying that inflation is about to decrease, preferred. She's the only one, or she's the one who's in charge of rate changes. They have conceded that Bartosh is bad, doesn't assume Fed efforts to curb things now, and that the sales are at a consistent price, but the Derby evidence is wrong. One, no warrants, doesn't explain why it's too soon to tell. Two, concedes that data proves inflation is easy. Derby 24 data suggests the pressures retreat back to the goal, but also Burroughs is wrong. It doesn't assume a trend, but our Irwin card says that overall trends show that CPI is downward. The link debate prefer our evidence because Vogel is wrong. One, it's too old and doesn't price in recent change in the way that trademark policies operate in readdressing bullying. And second, it's in the context of the squirrel. The card assumes there are no new enforcement issues that allow trademark bullying to become easier, like the app, which means it still links, but the link definitely outweighs the link turn. First is time frame. Amazon immediately starts lawsuits against small platforms and increases prices, but also the perjured evidence says that trademark bullying stifles new businesses and raises consumer prices. I'm not going for the big tech link, but conceded market consolidation means that the Goldman evidence should outweigh because the bill kills online marketplaces where the online owning has a retail function like Amazon and Walmart. They shut down marketplaces, but counterfeit goods are key to reducing consumer costs and creating incentives to undercut keeping prices low. The cost perception thumped doesn't matter because I'm not going for the cost perception link, but they say that there's no historical correlation. That is wrong. The inflation wrecks hegemony. The overview answered all of this, but the silver evidence were dropped. It says that it's key to readiness and that inflation hurts America's national defense. The historical stuff doesn't matter because we have read predictive evidence of what happens when the next time the economy is destroyed. But the evidence or their argument is wrong. First, they didn't extend a card. Second, it's a fallacy. Just because something has been peaceful in the past doesn't mean it will continue. And third is the dissat proves that the perm does not solve because there's no explanation as to why it would shield. We have proof that they cause rapid inflation, but I only have to win that it solves cyber or solves grids and cyber. That's 1 AC Campbell and Upton. First is investment in chips and subsidizing development for DoD systems solves supply chain disruption that causes military grids without key parts. We did not drop the root cause stuff because it solves the root cause better because there's no need to purchase e-commerce. And second, HR 5026 gives for authority to respond to an attack by protecting vulnerabilities in the squad. We also did not shop to Chevron because we said that it does not. We are not creating a new agency. We are just devolving new resources. It doesn't link to the net benefit because they said that we create new agencies and we make it harder for agencies. But there's no reason why we increase cases because we don't change the liability standard, proving that we don't link to econ VAT anyway. You can judge kick the counterclaim because they dropped a couple of re-highlightings to cyber that proves that there's no impact. Go to the cyber advantage now. There's no cyber impact. Every single 1AC re-highlighting proves that you should be really skeptical of their impacts. We've said that it's thumped. The Campbell evidence says that they're already in the supply chain and the impact is not escalation, but the Nick Hoctor evidence says that there's all causes and the Roach evidence says that it's difficult and there's no impact anyway because they need superb knowledge of the equipment and the attacks would be primitive, proving that the dissat outweighs the dissat outweighs even if you judge kick the counterpoint and vote on the squad.
310. We'll start now.
I'm gonna upload the rehighlighting.
Yeah, Gabby is gonna send.
Inflation. Sorry? Oh, I'm so sorry. The counterfeiting advantage, the advantage counterplan, the inflation deal. Yep. Okay. Is everybody good? I'm going to assume yes. The solvency differential between the counterplan and the plan outweighs the low risk of the net benefit. Even if you think there's a relatively moderate risk of the counterplan solving the app, you should vote app because the impact of the solvency deficit, aka action-reaction spirals, outweighs the DA. Even low-level cyber attacks on the grid by adversaries such as China, Russia, or Iran on critical infrastructure snowball into global war because counterfeits can be programmed maliciously or to fail completely. That undermines readiness and mood safeguards. The adversaries see the U.S. as weak and capitalize that and use that as an opportunity to attack Sparky war. That was the Campbell and Roche evidence. It outweighs on magnitude. It's a threat multiplier because with critical infrastructure, things like the grid down, the U.S. doesn't have the resources to devote to solving other problems, and it erodes deterrence, which means we have inroads to solving their offense. Because if you remember, the 2NR was explicit about inflation collapses deterrence, but in the status quo, deterrence will collapse absent the app because the adversaries see the U.S. as having counterfeits. On case they drop the 1AR wards that were cross-applied from the NAS evidence. Action-reaction spirals will happen because terrorists will just blame state actors for cyber attacks, which means that there's no direct impact to cyber. It spirals into nuke war. That was in Duga, which they have no indicts of. I'll answer the first argument. The Campbell evidence, they said the re-highlighting the Campbell evidence, they said it was thought, but no, because the DoD can deal with that in the status quo. The very existence of that line, that 50% of parts are counterfeit, means the DoD is aware and would obviously do something to fix it. And it's linear. The more adversaries see counterfeits in the grid, the more likely they will be to attack. Then the Nakar evidence says that the Nakar evidence is irrelevant because we're winning that the only interlink to the escalation scenario is the critical infrastructure, the advantage counterplan. The counterpoint does not solve the 1AR impact. We've isolated that the Chevron strike down means that agencies are no longer deferred to from the executive. Passing the bill does not matter because the courts will literally just strike it down. That causes legislative uncertainty, which definitely leads to the cost perception link that Gabby read in the 1AR. Their solvency evidence is from 2021. It doesn't assume the Chevron decision, which means they have no way out of this one. Any risk that the counterpoint solves, or that the plan solves better than the counterpoint, is a reason to err app because the grid impact is linear, which means time frame could also be much sooner than we all predict. Extend this second deficit. This one also implicates the links to the net benefit. Infinite funding and regulatory changes keeps the DoD locked into playing whack-a-mole. Of course, that increases litigation costs and government spending, which definitely leads to the net benefit. They read the card for us. That was the 1NR cost perception link. Any risk that the permutation shields the link to the net benefit is a reason to vote for perm, do both, and air app because our internal links are clearly about what policy should be implemented. Their planks are just secondary recommendations that Campbell does concede are insufficient to solve the root cause, the inflation DA. Uniqueness controls the direction of link, because even if you are uncertain as to how the affirmative affects companies and if that will raise prices, you are certain that inflation has been high in the past and is continued to stay high. Except the Bartosh evidence for the 2AC that says consumer spending has slowed because of inflation. The Bartosh evidence pro-dites itself because it says that consumer spending is the best indicator of how consumers view the economy and how the economy is doing as a whole. Extend the Deroy evidence for the 1AR should frame how you evaluate the uniqueness debate, because it explicitly says that it is too soon to tell if inflation is on the 2% path, which answers their words about us not having any predictive evidence. Inflation, or it being too soon to tell, is a reason that you should err affirmative, because you are very uncertain as to the state of inflation in the status quo. Extend the Burroughs evidence that says that the June CPI says inflation is still rising at a rate not seen in past generations. That means to vote negative, they have to win. That the risk of a link is so huge that inflation has literally never exceeded that. They said, I'll answer the Turns case stuff here with the link debate. The only link they went for in the 2NR was trademark bullying. I'll extend the 1AR indice. The Pritchard evidence and the 1NR on trademark bullying is only about big tech consolidation, pricing small business out of the e-commerce platform industry. They conceded that other countries saw big tech consolidation through antitrust legislation, which being the link is zero. The Wards and the Goldmine evidence is exactly the same. It's only about big tech competition and extent vocal. Empirics prove that trademark bullying is unsupported by data and that remedies exist in the status quo for overly aggressive assertions of trademark cases such as sanctions, attorneys' fees, declaratory judgments, state bar reprimands, and public shaming all solved. Their Turns case stuff, they said that increasing prices would disrupt the supply chain, but no, because the time frame of the link is at least similar to the app solving its impacts, because it requires big companies to sue them, then win those cases, and then that would result in increased prices, which obviously does not weigh the app. They said it would cause the DoD to buy counterfeits with Turns, but no, that's asinine. Obviously, the U.S. government puts egregious amounts of money into the DoD, and the 1AR did answer the Turn.